This podcast is sponsored by the Watts Hampton Cove, a brand new luxury apartment community located in beautiful Hampton Cove. The Watts offers 1, 2, and 3-bedroom apartment homes with stylish finishes and thoughtfully designed amenities. A short 15-minute drive from downtown Huntsville, the Watts offers unique features such as direct connectivity to Hayes Nature Preserve, over 10 miles of walking trails, Flint River access, mountain views, a large saltwater pool, dog park, dog spa, a 24-hour fitness studio, and more. Dwell and delight this new year and make the Watts your home. For the month of February, they are offering a $25 Amazon gift card for anyone that tours and mentions the Beyond Rockets podcast. Learn more and schedule your tour today at livethewatts.com, and all this information will be in the episode notes. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond Rockets. Today I sit down to talk with Nadia Niakossary, Senior Director of Development for RCP Companies, the company behind the ever-expanding MidCity District. And thank you so much for being here. Super excited for this episode. There's so much to talk about. If I would like to begin with just having you introduce yourself. Let's get started there.
Thanks for having me. I am Nadia, and I am a Huntsville native, Huntsville local, like yourself. I work for a commercial real estate developer, RCP Companies, as the Director of Development. I'm glad to be here.
So,
always the hardest question.
Yeah, always the hardest. We talked about it off air. It's a hard question. But so, as a Huntsville native, did you ever think when you graduated high school back in 2012, 2013, that you would come back here? Because I know you had other jobs. You got your bachelor's from Auburn. You went to Chicago, did some work. Did you ever imagine you'd be back in Huntsville working here?
No, not at all. And even when I first started this job, my boss was always trying to get me to stay longer, and I was always like, you know what, I'll work for you for a little bit, but I'm planning on moving to LA or Chicago or Austin or wherever it was. So no, and that was such a common narrative for people our age who went to high school here that were like, okay, gotta get out. Once I leave for college,
I'm gone.
I'm gone. Never coming back unless to raise a family.
That's the only, unless you're an engineer or you want to raise a family, you stayed in Huntsville. And besides that, it was there's nothing fun to do, nothing to do past 10. It wasn't a place to be. Even I graduated in 2017. And it was definitely there was many people that I talked to, many of my friends that were like, I will never come back to Huntsville. And I have a lot of my friends that have come back, and it's fun being in the role that I'm in because I'm able to show them all the cool things. Even friends that are coming back just for just to visit their family, you should stay in Huntsville. You should move back to Huntsville. Why would I? Let me show you. And I'm just showing them around. So it's really cool, but it's the dynamic even from 2017 to now has changed so much for Huntsville, and it's continuing. We're going to talk a lot about it today for MidCity, but it's continuing to grow.
I'm totally that friend for my group too. It's like I'm always the Huntsville hero, Huntsville mayor, whatever. The people will text me and be like, "Hey, mayor, where should we go to eat tonight? Give us a couple options." And I'm like, "Didn't you grow up here too? Shouldn't you?"
Yeah, that is exactly what my family is too. They're like, "Oh, future mayor." My birthday was a couple weeks ago, and the birthday cards were Clark Dunn, future mayor, Beyond Rockets, Rocket Man, all these different titles. I'm it's just Clark.
You're just a great ambassador for the city.
I guess so.
And we put it, I'm sure you do the same. I put all the fun things that are happening in the city on my Instagram. Mm-hmm. And so people who we grew up with are constantly seeing what's going on in Huntsville, and they get intrigued, they get interested. So I think that's what we're here for. That's
what we're here for. Yeah, it's fun because it's even friends that will live in other cities and they really enjoyed that city for a while, but then they're also there's something about Huntsville that I really miss. And it's well, now they have what the other city that you're in has, plus it's still kind of that unique Huntsville. You can still go to South Huntsville and not feel like you're in this big city. My family's my parents still live in South Huntsville, and it's still South Huntsville. It's not changed. It's not there's new things that are coming, but it's still South Huntsville. Mm-hmm. And then there's still parts of it where it's it still feels like that old place that I grew up.
Totally.
But then there's areas like MidCity we're going to talk about that is so much more and so much grand than anything that has ever been, and is continuing to grow. It looks like you started working for RCP in 2017 as the marketing consultant. What did it look like in 2017, and what was the planning process like for what the construction would look like today for MidCity? What were you doing in 2017 to make it look like what it is today?
Yeah. So backstory to that, my boss, his daughter was my college roommate.
Okay.
So it's all about, who you know.
100%.
And I kind of just fell into this job. I had just left Chicago. I came home from Chicago after working in the music festival industry, doing marketing and social media for Firefly Music Festival, which is one of AEG's big music festivals in Delaware. And I had just gotten back, was not planning on staying, was like, okay, I'm just going to come deal with some family stuff, apply for jobs.
And I'm out.
And his, my roommate, Ashley, she had told her dad that I was in town for the summer, and he was actually trying to put on a music festival at this thing called the camp to like kick off the camp.
Okay.
Right. So I met up with him for coffee one morning, and I was asking him about like what he had going on. They had just completed the Whole Foods project, and they were in the process of completing the project across the street, which is the Char and Ulta and Chewy's project. And then they had ran the mall for 2 years, so 2015 to 2017, and the mall started coming down February of 2017.
Wow.
I moved back, was it like July of 2017? And then the music festival happened in August. So I just kind of helped him with, that was like my marketing consultant role was like, it was a large red dirt pile. Topgolf was already starting construction.
Okay.
And they were building out, and we were all building out the camp where, if you remember, Lone Star Steakhouse once sat on University Drive. So leveled Lone Star and started putting together this place called the camp, which was a brainchild of our master architect, Rob Robinson, who is so Urban Design Associates. They are our master planners for MidCity, and they were brought in on the very beginning of the process in 2015 when we first bought the mall, and they said, okay, we're going to start this placemaking project called the camp, and it's as like a little campfire to MidCity. So the idea was we would get people there, come hang out, music, food, coffee, whatever, and have them come hang out at the camp and literally watch as MidCity comes out of the ground.
Yeah, and I think like I actually had Dennis Madston, the long-term city planner, on, and we talked a lot about projects in Huntsville and projects, the past projects, future projects, continuing projects like MidCity. And he talked a lot about MidCity and just that idea of opening the camp and how that was such a unique way of approach to what is eventually what it is today and what it's going to continue to be, because it got people interested in coming there. Because like the mall was falling off. There was not people were forgetting that was an area of town. And then you open up a small little location. It doesn't take you a lot of time to get it off the ground, and you're able to get people back there. Was that initial impact when you first opened the camp, was that tough to get people back there, or did people kind of want to come back and see what was going on?
It was pretty tough. Because we when I started, we had just started the camp Instagram and Facebook and MidCity Facebook and Instagram, and like it was all just kind of like, we barely had any followers, right? So getting people interested in what was happening, and you've been here long enough to have seen a lot of events, a lot of festivals, a lot of things come and go, right? So we announced this music festival, Fireside Music Festival, and everybody's like, yeah, okay, sure, whatever.
They won't be around too long. Don't worry about them. They're just a kind of a thing now, but then they'll go away next year.
Exactly. So, and the festival actually happened, and we like put it on. We had a great big stage. We had an awesome lineup of artists, and then it rained all 4 days.
My goodness.
It was rough, but it was, that's what really kicked off.
And that was in like July of 2017?
That was August of 2017.
Okay, wow. And so it was a quick turnaround as far as like getting that camp. And then was that the ultimate goal was just to get something there as quickly as possible to then get people saying, what's going on? Like, what are these new announcements? What is this area eventually going to look like? I guess now like the camp has it's almost its own entity there. It's like there's MidCity and then there's the camp.
Exactly.
Not the same thing. And was that always the thought moving forward, or did that kind of happen as the area started to develop?
Yeah, we wanted the camp to be what we wanted MidCity to feel like. So we wanted the camp if you did you ever visit in 2017, 2018, like when it first started?
I don't remember the first. So I think I went there pretty early on because I remember there was just Topgolf and there was a lot of, and it was just Topgolf and it was just the camp. Because I remember going there at that point because I remember going to the coffee shop. And so that must have been probably 2017, 2017, pretty close to when y'all opened. Probably
2018 because Topgolf opened December of 2017.
Okay, because it was pretty close to like my first semester of college at UAH. Okay. I would go there and like I would have coffee, or at Calhoun I would go there and do stuff. So it must have been pretty early on because I remember there wasn't very much, and it was still very much like it was a blank canvas. It was like I still don't really know what they're doing. Like, what is their goal?
It was a big dirt pile. That's right.
It's such a it's a huge space. Like, what do those conversations look like with Topgolf and with some of the other tenants you have there? When you're planning this process out in 2017 of saying, hey, this is what we want the area to look like. This is what we want MidCity to look like. Are you reaching out to is RCP reaching out to Topgolf, reaching out to Trader Joe's, reaching out to REI, reaching out to, you name it, to have them come? Or is it kind of a mutual engagement back and forth?
Kind of depends. Nowadays, people reach out and seek us, because the word about MidCity and the word about Huntsville in general has really popped off, obviously. So, but back then, 2017, it was definitely us reaching out and saying, "Hey, have you ever heard of this town called Huntsville, Alabama?" Yeah. And back then, 2017, the word had not gotten out yet, not as much as it has now. So it was a sell. I mean, we had to really pitch Huntsville. We always told the story of what was happening in Huntsville, and then we would talk about our project. Yeah. It's kind of Huntsville's just a very interesting market, the way that the city's laid out, and the way that Huntsville's kind of this hub for like 1 million people that live in North Alabama and Southern Tennessee that come into Huntsville for work, for pleasure, for healthcare, to shop, to play, whatever. And that's what we had to show these larger retailers, larger national tenants, for them to like understand that they would survive and they would actually kill it, right? Yeah. So like Topgolf, for example, that was an interesting story when my bosses had bought the mall from with the city. Mayor Battle and my boss Max, they went to Dallas to visit JCPenney, that was in Madison Square Mall, and they were like, "Hey, thank you so much for serving our community. You gotta go." And JCPenney was like, "This has never happened to us before." And Max always tells the story that Mayor Battle said, "Well, there's a first time for everything." So in the same trip that they visited JCPenney to tell them that we were tearing them all down, he went to Topgolf. And they convinced Topgolf to open in the smallest market that they had been in at that time. So that was kind of like their new prototype, a smaller Topgolf, more limited, options and stuff. But we've heard that they regret building it so small. Like they had wished that they had built more meeting space and more bays because of just how well that this market supports them.
And I think what's super interesting too is that Topgolf was that first thing there, and It was so big that it was hard to not notice it. Yeah. And I think that is such a clever, like, I don't know if you know if he was, I don't know if your boss meant for it to be that way or if it just kind of happened as the first tenant. But just to see the nets go up, it's hard not to wonder what's going on over there.
Yeah, see those nets.
And then you start driving by, you start looking, you start researching, you start Googling, and then you slowly find out, hey, there's actually something open there. There's the camp. Okay, I wonder where the camp is. I wonder when the Topgolf opens. Oh, I see all these other signs. And so I think that's such a unique thing to do. And, I mean, it probably was planned. He probably knew what he was doing, but it's still such a cool thing just to think of, like, let's tear down this mall that everyone's known about for so long, has such a legacy here in Huntsville. And let's put up these huge nets, but not really tell people what it is. And maybe they'll guess it's like it's a country club coming. It's whatever. No, it's Topgolf. And this is this huge area we're calling MidCity. And I think that's amazing. And so like your role at RCP has changed quite a bit over the years. And in 2018, I guess it was, or shortly after within your first year of being there, the first 10 months of being there, you transitioned to be a project coordinator. And one of the big projects you kind of started planning and kind of working with the city of Huntsville with was the amphitheater that is open. I guess probably April of last year,
May of last year, yeah. So almost a year ago.
And so, what did that process look like? Working with the city to kind of plan and develop this amphitheater that we have today.
Sure, yeah. So my original role at RCP kind of evolved as the company evolved, as MidCity evolved. And my boss always said that he always made me, because I was always like, I'm not staying in Huntsville. I'm going to
I'm out.
like I'm going to help you with this one thing at the camp, and then I'm like going to apply for somewhere else. And he always said that he intended to make me so busy that I couldn't think about leaving, and it worked. So right around the same time, we met a group called Sound Diplomacy through a connection of a connection. A man named Shane Shapiro, who was the founder of Sound Diplomacy. Sound Diplomacy are music policy strategists, and they came to Huntsville, and the goal was to scope out what they call the music ecosystem and provide research and recommendations of how to preserve and progress that music ecosystem to make music an economic driver for the region or city and region. Mm-hmm. So we had introduced Shane Shapiro to Shane Davis, and who's the head of economic development for the city of Huntsville, as well as John Hamilton, who's the city administrator, and Mayor Battle. And they had this challenge at the time that, we just announced a ton of jobs coming to Huntsville. Mazda Toyota had just announced, the FBI was just, getting started. They had just announced Facebook Data Center, Blue Origin, and all these awesome companies were coming to plant in Huntsville. And there were not a whole lot of 20-something-year-olds itching to move back to Huntsville or to Huntsville to fill these jobs, right?
For sure.
So there was a lot of research that music is one of those key workforce recruitment tools that could get young people to want to live in Huntsville to fill all these jobs. It's like that, to recruit that next generation of a workforce for Huntsville. So we started the music audit, and I was the local consultant for Sound Diplomacy. So that was a really great way to kind of get reintroduced to the city. Growing up here, I was also a South Huntsville kid, and I really never crossed Airport Road,
never.
Little Rosie's was kind of where the line stopped there, because there was no reason for me to. There was nothing for me to do downtown. Downtown Huntsville Inc. had kind of just started when I moved back in 2016, 2017. So there was really nothing to do downtown. The mall was gone on the west side. Bridge Street was there, but I only went there if I really needed something, kind of thing. So when I was the local consultant, I was in charge of connecting the international crew that came in for the research portion of the music audit to the local music movers and shakers. So we did 12 different roundtables and focus groups, each of them having a very specific group. So one was, the city government, one was artists, one was music festival producers in the city.
Wow.
And we just talked about, what are your challenges? What are your strengths in the city? What is working well and what's not? And that is what they utilized, and, and a ton of research that they did on their own and some interviews. And they put together 47 recommendations of how to make music an economic driver for Huntsville. One of the very first recommendations was about the amphitheater. When we had done the master plan for MidCity, if you look at this master plan has changed. I mean, I get a new one every other week.
Wow.
So it's changed drastically since 2017, 2015, when we first announced MidCity, right? It's become a lot more dense. We announced it as a $350 million project. It's now well over $1 billion project. So it's just, growing. And when, I lost my train of thought there.
The master plan for
thank you.
MidCity, and I guess was there always that spot that you were this is going to be something of entertainment here? Or what did that look like?
if you look at the very first master plan of MidCity, you'll see where the amphitheater was actually where Top Golf is, and then Top Golf was where the amphitheater is. So that was the very, very beginnings. But then, obviously that changed once Top Golf got there. And then when we had the amphitheater on there, what was shown was like a shed in a field type amphitheater, kind of similar to like, Oak Mountain Amphitheater or Ascend, like a grassy lawn with like a stage kind of thing. And we were talking to Live Nation at the time. The recommendations from Sound Diplomacy said, if you're going to do an amphitheater, you got to do it with the right team and you got to build the right type of venue.
Yeah.
So enter Ben Lovett and his crew. So for your listeners who are not as well known for the Huntsville things, Ben Lovett is the co-founder of TVG Hospitality. And he's also in the band Mumford & Sons.
Yeah.
So he came to Huntsville. We met him through Sound Diplomacy.
Which is such a crazy, like, just how this process works. I mean, it's
everything's
just
about a connection.
And it's
such
crazy. And it's like, and I feel like at the time for you, I mean, I would guess as being a Huntsville native and just thinking like, no one really like famous comes to Huntsville. Like that wasn't really a thing. Sure. And then you're sitting down with him across the table and you're like, this is the full circle. Like, I just couldn't imagine what that was like.
Yeah, that's really what kept me here for so long. Like the projects that we were working on were so interesting and so fun.
So beyond what Huntsville, like, you ever imagined it would be. And you're just like, I'm like front and center, I'm front stage helping these projects become reality.
Exactly. Like having a hand in it, even when I was like 23, 24, whatever, having a hand in like changing the cultural landscape of your hometown is pretty special.
Pretty cool.
It's been a huge blessing, and I've really enjoyed. Like, ask any of my friends, they'll tell you that like, oh, I really do love my job.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how the amphitheater started. Was they suggested, we were talking to Live Nation. They said, don't go with Live Nation, because if you go with Live Nation, they're gonna take tours to any of these larger markets that are around Huntsville before they take them to Huntsville, Alabama. They'll take them to Nashville, Chattanooga, Birmingham, Atlanta. But if you go with an independent operator like TVG, they will make Huntsville their primary focus. The staple, yes. So we did our whole like pitch on like Huntsville, and like in our pitch we talk about Dr. Warner Von Braun and how he was actually a composer himself, and that he knew back then that in order to build the space program in Huntsville, he was going to have to bring this quality of life to Huntsville. So he helped bring like he actually helped found the Huntsville Symphony and the Huntsville Ballet.
Wow.
There's a lot of German restaurants here, obviously, like that German influence of like that quality of life coming to Huntsville to help get us to the moon, right? So I love telling that part of the story, because it's kind of all happening again. And history is a little cyclical, so you see all of this growth happening, like the Artemis mission to Mars is happening in Huntsville. Yeah. You have all of these jobs that are coming here. And so now the city is like changing their tone and focusing on quality of life, and that and bringing more entertainment options and supporting projects like MidCity and the VBC renovations downtown and the revitalization of downtown Huntsville and all these things, so that they could help recruit workforce. So I just love to make that connection.
It's such a cool thing. I mean, when I had Ryan Murphy of the amphitheater on, and we like sat down and talked about his story and him coming here, a big part of that we talked about at the end was just how he's created that legacy, and that history that Huntsville does have is presented in where the artists stay.
Exactly.
And like that, and being able to, he's like, a lot of them now are staying extra days in Huntsville because they want to learn more about Huntsville, because it's such one of those places that they just knew about it as they drove through to go to Birmingham. They just knew about it as they were going to the beach and at Gulf Shores. I mean, like, they never thought of Huntsville as like, hey, I'm playing a venue here that holds a ton of people with a sold out crowd that's just engaged and ready to be a part of something that Huntsville has needed for a long time.
Exactly.
And so being able to show them the history, and then like, I think we had him on shortly after the amphitheater opened in spring of 22. And I mean, like he said, even then he was getting people that were staying extra in Huntsville. I bet even now, when the amount of concerts they've announced for this year is insane. I mean, I have to always refresh their Instagram because I might miss something. But I mean, just being able to have these people that are like, hey, I really want to stay an extra day. I really want to come on a Sunday I'll play on Friday, stay Saturday, go back Sunday, or stay Sunday also, or whatever that might look like, just so they want to experience and see what Huntsville's all about. Yep. Is just amazing to see, and I love how those things are just getting interwove back into the community, into these new developments like MidCity. Is amazing to see.
Yeah, they go to Space Camp, they go to Muscle Shoals to like check out the Fame Recording Studio or Muscle Shoals Sound, and there's a lot of really great legacy things here that these artists, when they're on tour, they like want to be a part of. And I think that's also one of the most special parts of the Orion was just how they're focused on the artist's experience. You know, like there's no other venue that like focuses on the artist experience first. And this comes from, again, a guy who has been on tour literally around the world.
Yes.
So he's seen the best and the worst of all these venues. And so he brought that to the table. He was like, I want them to have windows in their green rooms, and I want them to, I want the back of house to work more like a hotel rather than, the back of house of a venue. And I want there to be like actually good food and good drinks. So the artists are having a great time. And then all the tour managers talk. And when the tour managers talk, you get better tours the next season. Yeah. So they had an awesome first season, and it's just going to continue to just snowball.
Yeah, and I would guess that the success of the amphitheater opening in spring of 22 basically kind of propelled that MidCity to that next level. I mean, you announced a lot of new developments in 2022. I guess Trader Joe's came in 2022, or that was announced in 22.
It was announced in 2020.
2020. Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
And then it opened. Of the City address. Actually,
and it opened like did it open in the spring of 22?
It opened
also?
September of 21.
September 21. Wow. I mean, I
know that one. That was kind of where my career started too. Was at Trader Joe's, and it was a tough one. So I know the dates like the back of my head.
Yes. And then I mean, they announced the big, I guess in 2022 as well. Maybe was the first residential development or the residential component to MidCity. The $82 million development called Metronome that I guess even just began in early 2023. Now that we're talking pre-leasing and actually getting occupants, which is amazing to see. I mean, was those levels and those like visions that your boss had and RCP had, and just kind of like your journey with RCP was to always kind of offer this one-stop shop where you can do everything, you can live, work, and you can play all in one location? Was that always sort of the goal? Because I mean, you've announced more and more and more, and we're going to continue to talk a little bit about it, of just future developments coming.
Yeah, if you think about how, and we think about this a lot, is how do the people that we want to recruit to Huntsville, how do they like to live? How do they live in DC and Denver and Austin and these markets that we're trying to recruit people to move from to Huntsville? They want to be able to walk out of their front door and take their dog to a park, right next door, or walk to a grocery store, or be able to like bike to work. They want to live the idea of, and in more urban areas, it's the idea of a 15-minute city, but with how Huntsville is, it's more of like the idea of a 5-minute city, right? Having everything that you need right there in proximity. So when we were building out MidCity, it's like you need all of the different types of uses, because if you have something that is just primarily residential, then it's empty during the day. If you have something that's primarily office, then it's empty at night. And then if you have just a retail strip center, then it's more of a destination use. People come for what they need and they leave. So having all of these different uses together creates this 18-hour district where it's literally activated all the time, from the moment people wake up and want to get coffee and go to work, and the offices that we are building right now, to the late night shows and bars that are going to be built in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's such a cool dynamic. 'Cause I think a lot of what Huntsville was, and you've seen it just being a native here, is there was pockets of Huntsville growing up that were those certain time frame that they'd be booming. I mean, a lot of times, like with the Hampton Cove growing up was not an area that was really busy during the day, because most people left Hampton Cove to go downtown to work, to go to Research Park to work. So what they had was not where it needed to be in some cases, and it's continuing to grow today. South Huntsville was the same way. A lot of people in South Huntsville worked on the Arsenal, and so during the day, it wasn't just like an evening, like sit down nice restaurants to eat at. We had a lot of fast food. I always made the joke, it was you either have chicken, or chicken, and that's all you have in South Huntsville. And then it's still kind of that way. You've a lot of fast food, burgers, and a lot of chicken restaurants, and that's really it. and they're slowly growing with the Hayes development right now, which is amazing to see. But there was those pockets, and so then I think bringing that, and we're seeing it with other developments too. Like, I mean, Bridge Street's had so many different iterations too, where they're starting to add residential stuff now.
Yep.
And there's a lot of like, you can stay and you can live there and you can work and you can play and you can do everything you want to. And there's a lot of developments that are happening right outside of Research Park. I think with the Collins apartments that they're building, Providence is a big area that they're developing downtown. And then, like I said, that the Hayes development, I mean, they're building so many apartments down there, which is, I mean, every time I drive down there, it's just like a whole new neighborhood's built. And it's just like, where's this been? And so there's those pockets. Do you think, I mean, in my head, I think MidCity was almost kind of that early adopter into doing that. Were you and the team at RCP kind of looking at other cities and what they were doing and kind of bringing that to Huntsville? Or did you see sort of that trajectory of what Huntsville was going to be and kind of were able to be kind of that leader in that?
Yeah, absolutely. Our master planners are what kind of dictate what we did in the beginning and how everything's growing, and that's who really lays out. And I wish I had a master plan with me, but I didn't bring one. But they kind of, it comes all in like waves. So the beginnings were these big retailers like REI and High Point and Top Golf. And that's kind of what you see at the beginning of the district on University Drive. Yeah. And that's kind of, retail loves to face retail. So
of course,
University Drive is historically one of the best retail arteries in Huntsville. And then once you get into the center of the district, things become way more vertical, 5, 6, 7-story buildings, apartments, offices, retail on the ground floor. So you still got shops on the bottom, you got apartments up top, and having people on site, like you mentioned, Metronome, for example, we're now pre-leasing the first apartments at MidCity. So having people that are going to be living in the district is going to add this whole new element to the vibe at MidCity, because people are going to be right there to be supporting the restaurants and shop at Trader Joe's, and hoping to be able to like connect the district better with bike lanes and walking trails, working with Dennis Madsen on that part. And also the new UAH president, Dr. Carr, he's awesome. So we've been talking about how to connect UAH and their new master plan to MidCity, and just creating like way more opportunities to like not use your car.
Yeah, which is, I mean, it's just like, it's crazy just to see this, because it's like, I mean, there's early developments of apartment complexes that kind of like changed Huntsville. Like the Artisan was such a new development when it came early on, the Avenue downtown, and then now it's just, I mean, blossoming with so many. I mean, we can't look out at my office window without seeing an apartment complex being built. You can't drive down. I can't drive home without seeing another apartment. 2 separate apartment complexes within 5 minutes of each other. It's hard not to do it. Was that ever? I mean, within your plans and seeing it, obviously the residential aspect was such a huge component of it and has been early on. I mean, it was always that like idea of adding residential. Was there ever a sort of like is this still the right plan because of just what Huntsville's growing and just the amount of apartments that are coming to Huntsville? Was it ever like maybe that kind of aspect is not what we need? Or was it always like, hey, we're going to add this to our plan? It's always a part of it.
It was always a part of it. I mean, we've already, if you look at those master plans from 2015, you'll see that like a large portion of the master plan was planned for apartment buildings. And I think we got in right at the right time, you know, when kind of right before all the apartment buildings started building, you know, because we've got 600 units that are about to open on site in the next month or two.
Wow.
So, and then another 600 that are going to come online right after.
Wow.
So we think that, I mean, never a doubt, I think people want to live in more dense areas in a district like MidCity.
Yeah.
So I feel really good about getting those leased and having people live there, because it's different than some of the apartment buildings that you're seeing around town
for sure.
A little bit, because I guess, I feel like our age group is more keen on buying property too, unless they're in these apartments. So you've got high amenities, like great amenities, and you're living in an awesome area and in a great apartment in a great part of town, or you're buying a piece of property and you're in a house. Yeah. So these apartment buildings that are a little more like scarce or like on the outskirts of town, I'm scared for.
Yes. And it's interesting because like I think I mean, I have friends of mine that work in like in government contracting, like roles on the Arsenal, whatever that might look like. And it's interesting to hear with their perspective of talking with their colleagues about, you know, living and like where they want to live and where they want to move to. And a lot of them are even like, I really am okay with living in an apartment.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to do the maintenance. I don't have to do yard work. I don't have to do any of this. And they have a really well paying job that kind of offers those amenities. And you're offering this location that has everything in one stop, and they're 5 minutes from their office in Research Park.
Exactly.
And I think that's kind of that. Like, a lot of them are very much just don't want to go. Like, they like entertainment, but don't want to be inconvenienced by having to go to entertainment.
Right.
And living in the entertainment district like MidCity, you don't really feel like you're leaving to go there. It feels like it's just part of the neighborhood.
Yeah. And think about it. If you were moving to a new city, what's the very first thing for a job? If you were moving to a new city for a new job, what's the very first thing that you would look for a place to live? I'm gonna look for somewhere that's close to where I work. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm gonna map where my office is and try to find something that's close to my job that is also close to some great things that I can walk to. So I feel like MidCity is gonna really provide that for people who are moving to Huntsville for all these jobs that we've recruited here.
Yeah, I mean with this over almost 6 years of working for RCP, when you never thought you would want to stay, you always thought this is going to be a sort of a temporary thing, and you were going to be leaving. There's been so many different iterations of MidCity. I mean, even in the last few months of us, we're talking into February right now. You've had a $110 million development called the Anthem House that's coming. An extra 600 units, I guess, is what that is, or maybe even more.
That's part of the 600.
That's part of the 600.
So we just announced Anthem House and Wellery, which are two more apartment buildings at MidCity. We've got 600 that are coming. So the last 2 years, honestly, have been like the years of apartments, right?
Yes.
I've been really heavy because we've got those at MidCity, but we also have this project downtown, City Center, which is where the AC Hotel is. So we just opened 300 units at there called Eclipse, and then we're building another 300 units that we've been designing for the last 2 years there. So all together, I don't even want to do the math right there, but so many apartments, like
goodness gracious.
That we've been working on. So now that those are under construction, we're now working on the hotels. So this year is going to be the year of hotels for MidCity. So we've got 4 different hotels that we're designing right now.
Wow.
That are hopefully, a couple of them are going to start construction this year. A couple of them probably next year. We're also designing our first 2 office buildings. So we're going to have people working on site in the next year.
Goal. It's always been the goal.
Yeah. Our office is actually going to move to MidCity this year. So it'll be really cool to just be on site and be able to like walk and get lunch somewhere and have everything right there. So I'm excited for what the things that we're working on right now, because there's a bunch of beautiful buildings and some great new like restaurants and retailers that we've been talking to that are all going to come there.
Wow. I mean, like it's hard for me to imagine on the outside it becoming bigger and better than what it already is. Like I feel like it's done so much for the city that it's like, okay, like good to go. And we barely even scratched the surface. Which is just it's amazing to see. I mean, thinking of there's a lot of things that we've talked about of like what the future looks like. These new developments that you're doing, apartments are a big thing, hotels, the office buildings, restaurants, all sorts of different stuff. Blue Oak Barbecue out of New Orleans coming. Yeah. Thinking about what this year looks like for 2023. What is one thing that you're the most excited about coming here? Either if it's an announcement that's coming soon, if it's something that's already been announced, what are you the most excited to see happening at MidCity?
Ooh, this is a loaded question. It's just really cool to see that how people have adopted MidCity in the camp in the last 5 years, right? Because I started when it was literally just flat red dirt. And the camp was not even a quarter of what it is today. We've really built that place up in the last 5 years. So, I'm really grateful to have seen what has happened And this year, I feel like the restaurants that are coming out, like Blue Oak that you mentioned, I'm really excited for them. They have a cult following in New Orleans.
It's like they're only their second location,
This
right?
is their second location.
Yeah.
They were actually on their way to check out Nashville for their second location.
And they stopped in Huntsville.
Through our hospitality partners.
and the rest was history.
And they're really excited about being here too. The response has been awesome. So that's going to be great. I'm really excited to have places in MidCity where people can hang out before and after shows at the amphitheater. I think that is really crucial, and that was one of the ideas of having the amphitheater at MidCity in the first place, was to give to the days of and I think Ryan mentioned this in his interview with you, but the days of like having people drive to a show and watch the show and then get in their cars and drive home, that's got to end, right? So we want to keep people, we want to bring them here, like go on a nice walk around the park, go shopping, grab dinner, whatever, go to a show, and then hang out afterwards.
Yeah. And even with the hotels coming, it's like, hey, you can make a whole weekend out of this.
You could
have a staycation. You could stay at the hotels that are right near the amphitheater. You could go to the show. You could go to Topgolf. You could go to REI. You could go to this park. You could go to that park. You could go whatever. You could look at a new apartment building if you wanted to move. Like you could do it all right there, which is just, I mean, it's amazing to see. This journey is something that you definitely could never have imagined.
Definitely
you would
not.
be one, back in Huntsville, two, doing this job that you absolutely love. And you would have, like, is there any desire now to ever leave Huntsville, or do you think that you've adopted this Huntsville culture again, that you're like, I'm more excited than ever to what Huntsville is going to become and is becoming?
It's it goes back and forth, because I do love what I do and I love being here. I really want to go get inspiration from other places, right? Yeah. So I kind of started this job right out of college, except for that 1 year internship that I did in Chicago. And everything that we do, everything that we are building, is always inspiration from other places. So I do get to travel a lot, which is awesome. So then I can bring my the things that like I saw that were inspiring from my travels back to Huntsville and say, oh, well, I went to this co-working space in DC and it was awesome. So maybe we should like think about that in one of our projects. I think as my career grows, I would love to be able to like work in a larger market and see how other developers work, and then come back and bring that experience here. But for now, I love what I do, and I think there's plenty of work to do here. Yes. There's always like something that like we're looking forward to. Yeah. So for a while it was getting Trader Joe's announced, and then getting the amphitheater announced, and then getting Trader Joe's open, and then getting getting amphitheater open, and then getting the projects, the apartments started, and now they're opening, and there's always like something like a goal or a dream to like that we're always looking to, like forward to. And like right now we're designing a lot of buildings at MidCity. Like I think I've got like 20 something projects at a time that are just in all different phases of the process. But one of the larger projects that we're working on is called Sanderson Yards, which we haven't really like talked about publicly yet, but we're building this area right outside the amphitheater called Sanderson Yards, which is where Sanderson Road is, that road out there. And it's kind of that's going to be the 2 a.m. zone of MidCity. That's going to have like bars and restaurants lined down the road where, if you've been to Nashville for a show at the Ascend, like that's your Broadway outside of the Ascend, 100%. Or Clark Street outside of Wrigley Field, or the Braves Stadium. What is it called?
Turner Field? No.
What is it? Wherever the Braves Stadium is. I forget the name of it right now. But that's gonna be like the area that people come and hang out before and after, or maybe if they don't have a ticket to the show, like that's the place to be.
Wow. That's awesome.
So I'm really excited about that. We're talking to a lot of, another really big perk of my job is that we get to go to all of these different restaurants and we try out restaurants.
That's amazing.
Like, having to like try out restaurants for a living is not that bad.
Where do I sign up for this job?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So we go and like we're constantly talking to different restaurateurs and chefs and operators about what we're doing in Huntsville and encouraging them to bring either like a second concept to Huntsville or expand their concept.
Wow.
Because we're trying to like limit the national, chains and the ones that have like a lot of places, because we want your experience at MidCity to be like one of one.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking to restaurants, it's the more of those like original concepts. And Huntsville doesn't really have like, Birmingham has like a really old food scene,
100%.
Like lots of legacy families that run the restaurant scene there. Huntsville doesn't really have that.
Yeah.
So you have to import it because like, I think like, what's a crazy stat? It was like 60% of Madison County is not even from the state of Alabama. So you got to import it. And that's what we're heavily working on right now we're constantly going to like Nashville, Chattanooga, Atlanta, Birmingham, and making connections with food groups that we want to bring to Huntsville.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an incredible thing just to see this journey that MidCity has had, that you've had with RCP Companies. I mean, working your way through over the last almost 6 years of kind of seeing your success grow there, you being more involved with big, huge projects that are just like, I just couldn't even imagine, meeting all these people, going to all these different places. How much of your success at RCP do you think was just being in the right place at the right time versus how much of it do you think was geared towards your hard work?
I think it was definitely right place at the right time, because it was not like I was seeking this job out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of fell into my lap. Big shout out to my boss, Max, because he has really invested in me and in my personal and professional development in that way, because he knew that I had zero real estate development experience when he hired me. And that's how I kind of transitioned from marketing consultant to project coordinator. Was when he hired me on full time, he was like, okay, you're going to start working on the development side with me. And I was like, I don't know the first thing there is to know about building a building. And he was like, well, you'll learn. Yeah. So I think, a lot of my, I was hired off my soft skills. I am a hard worker. I'm a great communicator. I feel like I'm a very like personal. I think so. I get along with a lot of people. I'm very personable. So we're a really great tag team when we're pitching the project, because he's speaking on it as a very, like, he's a seasoned real estate developer, and then I am the demographic that we are trying to recruit to Huntsville. 100%. So our story and like the way that we go about like pitching Huntsville and then pitching MidCity, we do a good job doing it.
And it seems to work. I don't think MidCity's slowing down anytime soon.
Not slowing down. And if anything, is ramping up real quick.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for sitting down and talking to me for the last 46 plus minutes now. It's been great learning more about your story and kind of your story with RCP, your story about being in Huntsville and being a native here. I continue to look forward to the success that MidCity will have in Huntsville for years to come. Continue to look forward to your success with RCP and any endeavors that you continue to do in your career. But thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to this what the future holds.
Thanks for having me, Clark. It's been great.